Hold on. It's not, give me a minute. It's not sharing the right screen.
No problem.
Okay. Okay, so hi everybody, my name is Dolly, and I'm going to be going through what is advocacy within the Canadian government. So just going to give an overview um, of the Canadian government, the big actors and influences within this sector, and learning how advocacy happens within the structure through interactions with big actors and influencers. So we're going to go through a pretty big just introduction, making sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to these really important building blocks. So we have, we can grow from there. Okay, so how Canada's government works. Okay, so Canada's constitution is a series of documents, not only one document. Is that true or false? Oh, sorry, I guess I can't see. Okay, well, lock in your guesses and we will see that it's true. So Canada's constitution is made up of many documents, and that includes the British North American Act of 1867. It's called the Constitution Act of 1867 now. There's also the Constitution Act of 1871 and the Constitution Act of 1982, and that's the newest one that has been included, obviously, and includes the Charter of Rights and Freedom, which is really this newest thing. So these documents must be entrenched to become a part of the Constitution, which is politically quite difficult to do. And it has caused a lot of controversies before. So politicians are really hesitant to make changes. I believe obviously the last change was in 1982, but to do it, you need to have 70% of the population agree to it. So that means that the provincial governments, the premiers of enough provinces, at least 6 out of 10 provinces, but enough provinces that constitute 70% of the population actually have to agree to this. So that's why it's so hard to do. Okay, okay, Yasmin, just let me know if people, are saying like thumbs up or thumbs down, but Canada's constitution is made up exclusively of written documents.
Maybe we can have people put true or false in the chat if anyone wants.
Okay, good idea.
So we got 2 trues, 2 falses. It's very split.
Okay.
Oh, no, more true.
Oh,
4 trues.
Yeah. Well, it's false. So Canada's constitution includes both written documents inspired by the United States exclusively written constitution and unwritten elements, which were inspired by Britain's entirely unwritten constitution. And unwritten elements include constitutional conventions, royal prerogative, and written principles. So Canada is a constitutional monarchy. Is there anybody true or false?
Yeah, so we have 2 trues, 2 falses, and true. Okay, more trues again.
Okay. It is true. So Canada is a constitutional monarchy, making formerly Queen Elizabeth and now King Charles our head of state. The examples of the relevance can be seen on everything from money to stamps. Today, it really is just the role of government has become largely symbolic. So a really good example of this is that even though they are our head of state, they never make laws. It would be very frowned upon for King Charles to say we should change our tax system, for example. So it's just symbolic at this point. So, sorry. So the Constitution is made up of laws, rules, and practices which dictate how the Canadian political system runs. It is known as the supreme law of the land, which means that it takes precedence over any law. And two important elements that is defined is the division of powers between levels of government and the three branches of government. So this is really important because this kind of helps us understand where EWB actually needs to focus for our policy and advocacy efforts, whether, specifically it is federal, but we're going to look at what that means for it to be federal. Okay, so the division of powers, there's federal powers, which is section 91, and that's just the postal service, regulation of trade and commerce, military, fisheries, currency. And provincial powers, section 92 is provincial taxation, healthcare, education, licenses, including alcohol, local works, and undertaking, etc. So an example of how provincial powers are executed differently is how in Alberta, licenses for alcohol are private. So there's a lot of different private organizations, including Costco, that have Costco alcohol, versus in Ontario, it's all done through the province. And it's important to understand that the division of powers was established and has not been changed since 1867. So many of divisions of power would just not make sense in the current context. The initial Constitution Act was formalized in 1867, but only 4 provinces actually were part of it. So it does look much different than what we would expect to look like if it were reflective of present day Canada. And when we get into we're gonna skip that. So basically this is the order of when the different provinces and territories joined Canada. So as you can see, it started from 1867, but up until 1999, that's when Nunavut actually joined Canada. So it's very different, and that just goes to show how different provinces and territories are in terms of advocacy, specifically for international matters, which is what we focus on. So there's 3 branches of government. We have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Government is the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. So that's all of it encompassed. And the executive branch means the Governor General, which is representative for our head of state, which is now King Charles. And it also includes the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister is both the Prime Minister's office as well as cabinet. So how does EWB's advocacy fit in? So within the Prime Minister's office, we really do need to meet with key individuals. It's really interesting because Engineers Without Borders, we are coast to coast organization. And that means that there are key individuals that different chapters can actually meet with that can kind of advocate on our behalf, but specifically within the context of their region. So we can speak to their Atlantic advisor as well as their Prairies advisor, and have more, the more people that we meet with within PMO about our cause, the more likely it is to be like, oh, I've heard this from this region of the country as well. And then also within cabinet, it's, Day of Action youth leaders will actually meet cabinet members. It really is about making sure that we have a strong advocate for the Loss and Damage Fund, which we're going to talk about at a later next session for the summer advocacy leadership sessions. It really is so important that we have somebody who is championing our cause. And that means that we have to talk to MPs to see who is actually, willing to champion our cause, who cares, right? So that's our goal this year. And that's how they fit into the idea of the Prime Minister and his, group. And this is just circles. Okay, so the legislative branch, that's Parliament. That's where all of the members of Parliament that you vote for during federal elections, that's where they fit into this narrative. And that is in the House of Commons, but we also have the Senate. Now, the Senate is not elected, but they are still representative of Canada's varied regions. And so how advocacy fits in within EWB here is that we want to meet with MPs on Day of Action. That is super important because while it is really important that we make sure that, the Office of the Prime Minister as well as the Cabinet hear us, we also need to make sure we have buy-in from different parties and different regions of Canada, because a great example is that Alberta is, I think 86% of our representatives are from the Conservative Party. So it's kind of hard to say that you have buy-in here when only one MP agrees with what we're doing. So it's great to ensure that, we kind of match the diversity within our chapters in who we're meeting at Day of Action in Ottawa in October to ensure that we have that kind of buy-in from all parties. And yeah, so that's the legislative branch, House of Commons. Now the judicial branch is the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court, which is the federal court and the provincial court. And basically how a bill comes until it becomes a law. Sorry, my cat is playing with my purse. So it basically starts with, again, the idea of championing is so important here because the Prime Minister and the Cabinet are actually the people who get to decide what are priorities during different, it's called, so every time there's an election, there's a session. So there's a session and there's a new term. So we're currently within a new session, we just finished the session and we're starting a new session in September. So within the new session, what's going to be a law? Who is championing what? A good example is that an MP for Manitoba was actually championing having a water agency for Manitoba. And this, after I think he was advocating for 6 years, they finally were able to fit it within the federal budget this past cycle. So we want to make sure that we have a champion for Engineers Without Borders policy asks. And that, that happens by advocating within cabinet, making sure somebody is there to advocate for us. And then we see a bill happen and that goes to committee. That's where a lot of diversity within parties comes into play because the committee is actually made up of different parties. It's usually reflective of how how many seats different parties have. That's going to be reflective in the committees. So the majority of the committee members are going to be from the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party. And within that committee, there's research that's done and there's conversations that are had on how can we edit this bill to best fit the interests of Canadians. Then it goes to the House of Commons for vote. There are 3 readings that happen. And then we go to a Senate vote. And again, so we didn't touch on the Senate too much, but because they are an unelected body in this day and age, it's kind of seen as a stamp of approval. There is a little bit that can be done in terms of editing what the bill is. There was a lot of push for a recent bill, which is Bill C-11. It deals with basically kind of pushing more Canadian content within video channels like YouTube. And there was push for the Senate to edit it so it wouldn't be as prescriptive. And then from that, from there, when everybody votes in the Senate for the bill to pass, it goes to the Governor General, who gives it royal assent by virtue of Governor General gets its powers because the King says, okay, you speak for me, and then it becomes a law. So it can take a long time. Bill C-33, which was the environmental climate change bill from 2019, it took 3 years to finish. So this is a marathon. This is definitely not a sprint. Okay. Okay, so yeah, the federal government's budget. So the overview is that there's 2 main components. There's the revenue budget and there's the expenditure budget. And within the democratic system, we have presenting the budget and parliamentary votes. So the cycle starts kind of in, I would say in spring, March to June. That's kind of when the budget, the budget has been finalized, so then the new budget is starting. And then people are wondering, what are we going to include? A lot of cabinet ministers will go all over the country, seeing what the priorities are for every single Canadian in this specific year. And that's when we're starting to think about what is going to be included in the budget. How are we going to make sure that our needs are met? In the fall, it's the most important time for us as advocates because that's when we're seeing people send what are called budget letters to different important actors. So not only cabinet members, but also members of parliament who are in a committee. And that's kind of when they're deciding what we really need to ensure is within the budget. And then in December, so in December is when usually they call it colloquially it's the baby budget, but it's just like the first budget we talked about. That's going to be pushed, and it gets in through the winter term. So January to March, it gets kind of reviewed, seeing what can actually happen, and then it gets tabled towards the end of February, the beginning of March, and then throughout March, it's kind of approving the budget, making it into law, and starting the cycle all over again. And so how EWB's advocacy fits in is that this year's campaign, our first advocacy initiative really needs to be in September to ensure that during that specific time frame where MPs are most likely to listen to us and take our advocacy calls into putting it putting into the budget, that's the most important. So engaging with campus and community, meeting with your MPs in your different regions, and talking about the policy asks that we will be co-developing as different EWB chapters within the policy development sessions that are coming up. And that's kind of, when we start preparing for the budget release in February. Before then, in January, another big push is making sure that we have those budget letters, ensuring that the government listens to our policy ask and reflects it within this upcoming budget. And yeah, so the federal budget release usually occurs in February, and MP meetings like historically took place a week prior, but we are going to be doing MP meetings from the time we have a policy ask this year, because we want to ensure that international development and climate are things that kind of get sent to the back burners for times, and we don't want that to happen this year. We want to ensure that whatever our community decides is going to be our policy ask is actually pushed through. So that means that we want to meet with them more than just once. We want to meet with them ideally twice, once in the fall and once in the winter time, to make sure that they really take it to heart and that they really push for it and that they vote yes when that budget item gets put up for them to vote for. And that includes digital campaigning. It makes a difference when there's a digital campaign in the coming days before the budget is decided and finalized. So that's super important for us to take a part in. And of course, again, Day of Action is so important. This year, it's going to be October 23rd. So making sure that we're speaking to so many MPs at the same time about our same policy ask, ensuring that you're all equipped with, the learnings from these sessions that, are being recorded and we're going to have written components as well. Just, if you don't want to watch it, you can read it about what the main takeaways were. Having that kind of knowledge, and also what we're going to offer you at Day on the Hill, or at our Day on the Hill, but it's 2 days. It's one of like preparing for it and making an impact on the MPs and the cabinet members to make sure that we have the best possible showing. And yeah, it's the training day and the Day of Action for the policy request. So I think I'm going to stop there. Oh, okay. And I'll let Addie continue and talk about Day on the Hill.
And everyone, can you see me and hear me? Great. So I want to begin by saying this story begins in 2016, and it was May 2016, and I was kind of given a similar kind of presentation and overview and undertaking of how important Canada's policymaking is, how important it is for us to get involved, and how important it is for everyone to be a part of the political process. And probably like many of you, I was like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. It's a lot to take in, right? Policies, politics, it seems nasty sometimes. It seems really complicated sometimes. It's a lot of reading, a lot of really small text, a little fine print text. So it's overwhelming. And I too was very, very ignorant to this. And I yet was at the Day of Action, Hill Day. And we got there, and I suddenly was, being briefed by what we're going to say, what we're going to do. And I started understanding more and more about how important some of the things we were going to say was. And at that time, it was about convincing our Canadian government to increase its commitment to the official development assistance. And to not to bore you with what the ODA is, but it's Canada's commitment to invest in, other developing countries, and not send aid, but rather invest in certain businesses and organizations and ideas that would promote development. Because a really cool thing about government money being invested is that the return doesn't have to be monetary. If it develops the region, if it educates the region, if it just develops it, that can also be the return. So that was a really cool thing I learned. And as I'm being told more and more about this and briefing, I'm like, okay, wow, this is kind of cool. I get to actually go meet with MPs. These people are on TV. They wear really nice suits. This is kind of a big deal. But I still wasn't convinced. I went in pairs. I met with so many MPs. I kind of studied all night trying to memorize these facts and just trying to deliver what I was supposed to. And I still didn't understand the big picture. Now, Day on the Hill was incredible because this organization, EWB, plans so meticulously to arrange for almost 100 meetings with 100 different members of parliament from all parties, and we actually get to talk about how we want to change Canada's foreign policy, or I'm talking about 2016, of how we wanted to influence Canada's foreign policy. And there I was, just a student, another pea in the pod, if you will, and I went in and I had my meetings. I learned a few things. One, that MPs are also human. I thought that, I really put them on a pedestal, and while many of them are fantastic, I learned that a lot of MPs may not know more than me, which was really surprising. So when I spoke to them, when I told them about what EWB was trying to do, why we wanted to do this, it was really interesting to see that they could learn from me, and it wasn't just the other way around. Now, you see, this story, it's still fun, it's still great, but it really doesn't hit its impact until a year after. I went back to school. It was April 2017, the federal budget was being read. And I remember our EWB chapter held a viewing party. And so we all got together and we had a great year of, being EWBers and doing all of things. But somewhere I was convinced that what we did on the day of action was just another field trip. I had fun. I was on Parliament Hill. I took really bomb pictures that I could, put everywhere and look really political, et cetera. And to me, it was just that. Then came the budget reading, and I was very taken and surprised when the reading went something like this. Thanks to the efforts, and we recognize the blah 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 organization, Engineers Without Borders Canada. And I was like, whoa, did you just say our name? And so, there was a lot of uproar in the room. We were like, oh my God, they said EWB. And it was still a buzz, right? EWB had its name said in the House of Commons, big deal. That's great. And then we found out that the push we made to increase Canada's commitment to ODA, it wasn't completely the amount we asked for, but it was still an increase. And it happened because of what we did. Now, at that moment, I was like, I did that. But, as a collective, I realized that the efforts that we all put in through this day of action, through Hill Day, really made impact. And from that day, I think my life changed, and why I'm still here on the EWB side, and why I always promote and encourage everyone to play their part in the political process. See, politics still sounds scary. It's still a lot of words, it's still a lot of reading, but that's only because we choose not to participate. The more you get informed, the more you ask questions, the more you hold your elected officials accountable and realize, this is MP Selena, who used to be part of the Liberal Party, and she said at an EWB event that, remember that you hold the most powerful currency a politician could ever want, your vote. And that didn't make sense then, but after realizing what we had done, the impact of it, it made a lot of sense. I realized that every elected official, they actually have a responsibility to listen to me, to listen to you, to listen to their entire constituency, and we can't let that go. So let Day of Action, first of all, everyone come to Day of Action. The more of us that can storm that hill and let our elected officials know that we're here to hold them accountable, we're not backing down, we want change, and we want it now, the more that message is going to get communicated, and the more impact and change we're also going to see. But don't let Day of Action kind of be the one and done event. Continue that energy, continue continue that momentum into everything that you do, everywhere you go, and kind of, bring that back home too. A lot of times I remember when I would go to Parliament Hill, I would think, this is it, I just got to talk to the MPs. But no, I take that back. I'm sitting here in Calgary or Mohkinstsis, and I also do the same when I have the opportunity to write to my MLAs in Alberta, write to my city councillors at the city of Calgary, and of course our mayor, and so on. So that is my little story of how I firsthand witnessed the impact, the power of something like the Day of Action with EWB. And I can't wait to see that action happen bigger, and I don't want to say better, but it's bigger and more impactful this year. But that is literally the fire that happened, that it sparked this fire inside me, and I've been continuing it ever since. And I can't wait to see all of you also experience that, maybe for the first time, maybe for the second, third, I don't know, but experience that for sure. And then bring that back and continue that and play your part in the political process and really come out as winners of this wonderful system that we call democracy.
Thank you so much, Addie. That was amazing. I think we all learned a lot about Day of the Hill, and yeah, see all the claps coming in. We also have some questions from the chat, so maybe I'll read them out, and if you feel you want to speak on them. So someone
Sure.
already is in the chat, but I want to like say it out loud so anyone else who's also wondering the same thing. Is Day of Action something organized by the government or something entirely organized by EWB? Like, is it going to involve other organizations or individuals or just us?
I'll speak to how Day of Action has been organized in the past, and I think it'll be something similar. So Dolly and anyone else from EWB, if I say something incorrect, please add in, chime me, and correct me, because that's also EWB. We're not afraid to be a little wrong. So Day of Action is led by Engineers Without Borders. We do a lot of planning in sending out emails months and months in advance, and also follow up diligently, because MPs are really, really busy and plans can change literally last minute. And we organize these meetings. Now, we may partner with some other organizations that may be from educational backgrounds, think tanks, etc., that can help us strategize. Because when you are in front of, pretty influential people, people that can literally change the law, something that governs us every day, you want to make sure that what you're communicating is bang on, and also thought out and actually speaks facts. So sometimes that can't be just us, and we need to help a few other organizations or people that are experts in this area to help us come up with that narrative and that conversation. And then, with those kind of partnerships, we kind of go on the Hill and execute it. Now, I want to say that Day of Action is also a concept that is not just unique to EWB. We just do it really, really well. Many other organizations, many other, groups, they also do Days of Action on the Hill, where they go and, storm the Hill to get some sort of change action by EWB. And I just saw Gaurav's message. It is a single yearly event. So far, EWB has done an annual Day of Action. And I think through COVID, we had to take a little step back because no one really wanted to meet face to face to do policy talks. But I'll maybe hand it back to Dolly and anyone else from the EWB team if they can further elaborate or add on what it's going to be like this year.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you had it covered with, we do it once a year, but yeah, so this year it's going to be, the focus is going to be on October 23rd, but we will have people coming in beforehand. This Day of Action, yeah, sorry, Day on the Hill and Day of Action is the same thing. There's so many, it's very interchangeable. So sorry, we never stick to the same thing. It means the same thing, but Day on the Hill is going to happen the Monday because that's when all the members of parliament are in town. And then the day before, the Sunday, is really going to be our training day to make sure that everybody is equipped and feels like they can have these conversations with members of parliament. And it's not just about, I got feedback that, you guys or everybody here doesn't want to necessarily just read off a script, but you want to be able to be empowered and understand the policy ask enough to have a conversation that is meaningful. So we want to make sure that with these sessions and the sessions that are related to the policy development, that you have that knowledge, and we'll build on that during like Day on the Hill, but the day before. So that's kind of what it looks like.
Quickly onto that, Dolly, I forgot to mention this. Day of Action, Day on the Hill Day. They've all been, it's been really, really interesting to see. Like I've been reflecting on my journey. The very first one, I was all the way at the back, not putting my hand up because I'm like, oh my God, these words, ODA, 0.7%. I'm trying to do the math in my head, that meme where that lady's like thinking all those calculations. That was me in the back. Then, the next one, being a little more confident, asking more questions, realizing that MPs are just human beings. Some of them may not even know more than me. So, being a little more confident, etc., to going to actually being able to mentor some of you and being like, hey, you know what? I really messed up in this conversation. This is how I recouped, asking you those questions to help you find. So that's been my journey. And what I've realized is, and for all of those, experiences, none of them did I ever feel alone, and none of them did I ever feel underprepared, because the boot camp, as we used to call it, the day before, and even like throughout the day, there's a lot of support, enormous support that goes into preparing you. And this is the place to be. You know, I say EWB is always a brave space, not a safe space. So you put your hand up, you're like, I don't understand this, how can I do this, etc. And there's going to be enough of us in the room that are really going to challenge you in a way that you can grow by asking you, and we'll do mock sessions too. I love pretending to be an MP in the room, and I'm like, well, I don't know about this. Or I love to be like, oh, EWB, don't you guys build schools and wells in South America? Things like that are purposefully meant to throw you off, but you get to prepare for it in that mock scenario, have a few laughs, and then when you're in there, you kill it.
I'm just gonna, so just to answer the for those who can't come to Ottawa, is there any way to contribute? So it is all expenses paid for a day on the hill, so hopefully you can come. But if you can't make it, so we do want to encourage chapters, and maybe some of you don't know, but with national office, we have the policy and advocacy distributed team. So it's leaders who are part of who were part of chapters or are still part of chapters that really understand the EWB mechanism very well. So they are really, you're going to work with the chapters to ensure that all national initiatives related to policy and advocacy can be done. And one of those is going to be that we have member of parliament MP meetings happening within, we want to make it easy for you. So whether that be going in person, if you can, that's cool. But if it's easier to just have a Zoom meeting, a lot of MPs are set up nowadays that is just as meaningful, and it's free, right? So you don't have to worry about getting there, coming back. So we will make sure that we can facilitate having meetings, with your local MP if you can't be there for Day on the Hill, or even if you can, two is not, I would be happy if you met with him, with whoever twice. So yeah. Yeah, so tentatively the idea would be that we meet once in the fall, and then after there's a proposed budget in the fall, like the baby budget. We would see what happens, and then for the winter term, we would be working on budget letters to say, we like this, let's build on it, let's add more money, or whatever it might be, and meet with them again in the second semester. So one meeting per semester, ideally per chapter.
Well, you have a quick question. This is for the budget hearings, right? That happen throughout or is this something else?
Yeah. It's just, we're basing it on I guess you would call, like the budget cycle. And usually specifically for whatever our policy ask ends up being, realistically, there's going to be an announcement in during COP28. So we're going to know how impactful we were in December, if our advocacy efforts throughout Day on the Hill worked in December, and then we can build on them in the second semester just by meeting with them and reminding them of their, I guess, promises. So the advocacy campaign goal for the Day of Action this year is very broadly, it's loss and damages. So the idea of the loss and damages fund internationally, which is this fund that has been advocated for by the group of countries called the Vulnerable 20. So countries that have just a low GDP and have been affected by a lot of climate change, natural disasters. For 20 years, they've been rallying and asking the Global North to create a loss and damages fund because they didn't contribute to the climate crisis to the same level that they did. And last year at COP27, Minister Guy Bull, who is the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Canada, he was the first minister from the Global North to advocate for loss and damages fund being put on the table. And they actually, I think they extended it by 2 days, the talks and I don't know how it works, I'll be honest, but whatever, the conversations and the negotiations, so that they could actually get loss and damages, that was the biggest win from last year, to get loss and damages started. So this year has been the transitional year where we want to see how the fund is going to work. So we have different ideas. We have come up with 3 different areas that our team, our community can focus on, but we want the community to decide and help us with the policy development on what is going to be our, our policy ask, or, if we have to. But that's the main idea is, making sure that the global South, the vulnerable 20, I think it's up now to more, but that they get their loss and damages funding.
Yeah, and just to go back, so we were talking about, well, Dolly mentioned national office and how they can help with meeting MPs outside of Day on the Hill. That relates to our DT team. So I'm wondering if Lily or Alex, you guys would like to come in, speak a little bit about that or your experiences and how you can support people.
Yes. So yeah, I'm Lily, and as Alex, maybe he's in that direction on your screen. And yeah, we just have a couple things we want to say. So we are the outgoing co-leads of the DT, and the new cohort of the DT is just starting up. So if you're a chapter member, look out for them reaching out to you soon. As Dolly mentioned earlier, it is super important that we get going with advocacy earlier in September to be in tune with the budget cycle. So if the DT will be reaching out in the summer, so try and kind of get those advocacy juices flowing early, and things will be very good. With regards to Hill Day, do it. I went to Hill Day right after first year, which was like kind of a lot, but it was a really great experience and I learned a ton. And I've been with advocacy in EWB for 5 years since then, and I do think it was definitely a super important part. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to see if you like it. Alex, do you have anything to say?
Yeah. So I thought I could just give like a few thoughts about MP meetings because they're kind of scary and they don't need to be. So first of all, I've never actually been to a Day on the Hill. I've been part of advocacy since like 2018, never made it. So this will be my first one, so I'm super excited. But I've met with like almost 10, I've lost count, but like maybe 10-ish MPs. And yeah, like Addie said, the overarching thing is like, they're just people, right? Like, and this is like on Day on the Hill, it's like their Monday at work, right? And so they're not, you're probably going to be a little nervous for your first MP meeting. It would be weird if you weren't, but you don't, I mean, once you get into the meeting, you kind of realize real quick that this is just a person, and probably like a pretty nice person, to be honest. So I think I would just say like, it's not as scary as it seems. And it also like, I kind of always felt like I'm like wasting their time, or like I'm kind of like using up all their time or something, and who am I to be doing that? But like important to understand that this is almost their entire job. All day is just like meeting with different people. And so it's really not a waste of their time, it's their actual job. And also they probably enjoy meeting with passionate youth more than like their usual meetings, which is going to be like a really angry like business owner or something. So it's actually like, they typically, I find, enjoy these meetings, and so that helps a lot, that they're kind of like on your side kind of thing. Yeah, also I'm just like reading random points that I wrote down, but it's also like, I always thought like this person is going to be the world's leading expert on this issue. Like if we're talking about loss and damages, and if I say something wrong about loss and damages, they're going to catch onto it and they're going to be so upset. But that's not the case. Like we're going to have a day of training on the Sunday for Day of Action, Day on the Hill, whatever you want to call it. That one day of learning all about this, you'll probably know more about the thing than the MP does, because the MP is thinking about 100 different issues. So it's not like you're meeting with this intimidating, all-knowing, judging entity. It's just a person who is genuinely wanting to learn hopefully genuinely wanting to learn from you about this thing. Yeah, so it's just my overarching like message, I guess, is like, sure, you'll be nervous, but there's actually nothing to be nervous about. They kind of, they're nice people. It won't go badly. It will be fine. And it's actually, it ends up being really fun. Like you exit those meetings and you're like, I made a difference, which is fantastic. And it was cool. I was in a fancy office, all dressed up, talking to the MP. And so, yeah, just it's a super cool opportunity to meet with MPs. Not that easy to do unless you're part of an organization like Engineers Without Borders, right? So I would say like definitely take this opportunity, go to Hill Day, I'll be there. And just, yeah, just enjoy the opportunity. And yeah, no need to be super nervous or anything. It'll be great. And yeah, if anyone has any questions about MP meetings, like the actual meetings themselves, I mean, you can ask them. And I would also just say, add on to the end, it was mentioned that Lily and I are DT co-leads up until September. And so, yeah, your distributed team representatives are going to be reaching out to your chapters about advocacy. I know that it's summer and you just want to be like hanging out on like a beach. Do that, but also reply to your distributed team representatives so that we can get the ball rolling before the school year starts. And they'll make us even more prepared and everything for Hill Day, and it will go even better. So yeah, and then, yeah, there was just a question, do we meet with just the governing party or all parties? And Dolly said all parties. You never know. I mean, especially in this minority government, you need multiple parties to do stuff. And you never know when a different party will be in power. So it's nice to already have those connections with MPs so that when they're in power, they know who we are. Yeah, if there are any more questions, but maybe I'll hand it off to Dolly now. That's my spiel.
There
Yeah.
is one more question. Sorry, there's one more question that was like a direct message, so I'll just say it aloud and whoever wants to answer. But someone asked, is this event for Canadians and permanent residents only, or is it open?
Everybody, just because, I mean, I wasn't a permanent resident the first 3 years I lived in Canada, but like neither were my parents and they still paid taxes. So even if you're an international student, you contribute to our economy. So it's so important if you like, I mean, I'm grateful if you're an international student or care about the government that you're living in, because a lot don't. So yeah, please, it's open to everybody. There really is there's no restriction. Just, we can only host 80 people max at the moment. So that would be our only restriction, but please, like, it does not matter if you're not a permanent resident or Canadian citizen, you're welcome to join us.
Yeah, that's great. And then we'll just see if there's any other questions, if anyone wants to unmute as well and just ask something that's cool or in the chat. Yeah, we'll wait a second. And
if not, you can always use either you can email me or you can send a message on Discord, a question, on the advocacy channel. I think that's the right word. I don't use Discord enough, but yeah, we'll see it there, and then we can give you an answer. So it's okay if you don't have any other questions right now.
Yeah, I think that's it for all the questions right now. But like Dolly said, if anything else comes up, feel free to reach us on Discord. Also, don't forget to take photos on Day of the Hill, have those reminding us. That is definitely a good point. And yeah, so I think that's it for now. I want to say thank you again for everyone who came and all of our speakers. It was really cool and it was really nice to hear from everyone. I'm also going to be sending out a post-event survey to the people who attended, just to hear back a little bit of feedback from you guys so we can shape the rest of these sessions. And yeah, that's all for now. Next week, we have our next session on Wednesday, again, same time, where we're going to be talking about our policy focus this year. And our policy lead, Yashri, is going to teach us about loss and damage and a little bit of a deeper dive. We're also going to have a little discussion where you guys can voice your concerns and policies that we can focus on in the future. But that's it. The registration for that one is open, and future events the registration will be out soon. That's it. Thank you, and have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.